Ba-dum-bum, 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 ba-dum-bum. Hello class, this is your MJ, Mr. Nelson. I'm smooth, I'm in charge, I'm not loud. There's been some complaints about how loud I am, so don't have to worry. You don't have to adjust your volume. I've heard you loud and clear. I'm going to tone it down a little bit for all you quiet folks out there. Today we're going to be doing lesson 6-1, and we're learning how to convert decimals to percents and percents to decimals. Okay, so before we can do this, let's talk about what percent is, what percent means. Okay, Okay, so the word percent, I'll come over here. I want y'all to write this down too. So I'm going to write it down in two colors. Percent, and the per means parts of, and the word cent means 100. So literally what a percent is parts compared to 100. So in this first example it says convert 0 and 34 hundredths to a percent. Okay, now there's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you the first way, and then I'll show you the kind of the shortcut way to do this. So I want you to also think of a percent as kind of comparing it to 100, like a ratio. It's like a ratio to 100. So you're going to compare the number to 100. Okay, so the first way we're going to do this, we've got 0 and 34 hundredths. So we would write that as a fraction. We'd write 34 over 100. Okay, so parts of 100. This is 34 parts of 100. And so it's really simple. 34 parts to 100. So we just write 34 and write the percentage sign, which means parts per 100. So 34% per 100. Okay, it's really that easy, guys. The shortcut is you can just take the decimal place and you can slide it over two places. So if I write 0 and 34 hundredths, and I just take that decimal place and I slide it over two spots. So I go 1, 2. My new decimal place goes right here. And if I rewrite that, that is 34. And then just write my little percent per 100. So 34 parts per 100. Now, a little cool way to remember how to do this. You could take a decimal. We're going from a decimal to a percent. Okay, so that's DP, like Dr. Pepper. So just think Dr. Pepper. Even if you don't like Dr. Pepper, think of it as Dr. Pepper. And if you don't like Dr. Pepper, then you're weird anyways. Okay. So we start at the decimal and we go to the percent. So we go 1, 2 to move it over. So that's how I remember. We're always moving two spots to the right. That's just a little trick or a little example. So either way, 0 and 34 hundredths is really just 34%. Okay, let's look at a couple more examples real quick. Alright, so convert 75% to a decimal. Okay, so remember, percent, this percent sign means parts per 100. Parts per 100. So let's write this as a decimal, or sorry, as a fraction. So 75 to 100, so that's a ratio, parts per 100. And if we're going to write this as a decimal, we would say this fraction 75 hundredths. So we would write 0, because we don't have a whole number there, and 75 hundredths. Remember, this is the one spot, and this, the tenths. This is the tenths spot, and this is the hundredths spot. So it's 75 hundredths because the place value here is 100ths. So it's really that easy. Okay, so let's go back and look at our Dr. Pepper method. So DP, Dr. Pepper. Okay, and we are starting with percents now, and we're going to move it back to decimal. So we go 1, 2 spots that way. So we move our decimal place 2 spots that way. So we have 75% The decimal place goes right here, and we're going to move it 2 spots. So 1, 2. So our new decimal place is going to go right here. So when I rewrite this bad boy, it's going to be a 0 and 7500. So that's the trick. That's the shortcut. This answer or doing this method right here, they both work. Okay. Convert 1.5 to a percent. Okay, so this is kind of a little bit of an exception. I wanted you to see something a little bit unique, maybe like something we hadn't talked about so far. So we compare this to a percent, so parts per hundred. If we write this as a fraction, it's 1 and 5/10. And if we just come in here and add a 0 here, which doesn't actually change the number, that's still in 1 and 50 hundredths, or 1 and 5/10 are the same. 50 hundredths, that makes it a little bit easier. We can just come over here and do that. Okay, so I don't know if y'all remember the Texas rule, but to convert this to an improper fraction, we write Texas like this. So we do 1 times 100, that gives us 100, and then we add it to 50. And so that will end up being 100 plus 50 is 150 over 100. Okay, and remember this is parts per hundred, so this is actually going to equal, if we're doing percentages, 150%. Okay, now remember the DP rule, the shortcut. Okay, now where are we starting? Are we starting with decimal or are we starting with percent here? If you said decimal, you're right. We're starting with decimal and then we're going to percent. Okay, so we're starting right here and we go 1, 2 spots to get to percent, to get from decimal to percent. So we have 1.5, or sorry, 1 and 5/10, and we go 2 spots. So we go 1, 2. We fill in that 0, and so our answer, if we're converting this to percentage, is 150%. So that's the other way to do it. Alright, last example, we're going to convert 2% to a decimal. So remember, percent per 100, parts per 100. So 2 parts per 100. Okay, 2 parts per 100. And to write that as a decimal, that's 2 100ths. So you just say it, 2 100ths. Okay, so you have to know place value, but if you know place value, you're good. So 0 whole numbers. Okay, and it's 2 hundredths. So this is the 10th spot, so that's blank. Put a 0 in there, and we're going to put that as 2. So now we've converted it to a decimal. Now, remember, we've got the DP method too, the shortcut, and we're going to start with the percent, and we're going to go back to a decimal. So we're going to move that decimal point 2 spots back. So the new decimal place will go right here. Okay, so the example here is we have 2%. We are going to put the decimal place there. We're going to move it 2 places back. So 1, 2. Okay, so the new decimal place is going to go here. I'm going to fill this in with the 0, fill that in with the 0, and if I rewrite it, 0 and 2 hundredths, which is the same as the other method. It's just a shortcut. Okay, that concludes our video. Great job, and I will see you in class tomorrow.